Hello, my name is Mary Yearling, and I am a mother of three here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm coming today to you to help educate parents and community members that are concerned about what's going on in Indiana's public schools. I have Dr. Phil Harris and Joan Harris with us here today. They have written, along with Bruce Smith, The Myths of Standardized Tests, just to talk about, some history of standardized testing. We're doing these videos in short 5 minute, about 5 minute segments, so that people can start getting educated about what's really going on in public schools in Indiana. The first question I have, Phil and Joan, is can you tell me about the history of standardized assessments across our nation?
Well, it's a long history dating back from just before World War One, and I'll try to summarize that 100 years in just a very short period of time. The military needed a tool to help sort and select the recruits at the time and decide which ones should go into which kinds of activities within the military. Now, this was heavily debated at that time as to whether that was an appropriate way to sort the recruits. But the government needed a quick and easy way to get some idea of who should be trained in what kind of operations and what parts of the military. Then we skip over to past World War II, where the huge number of servicemen came out of the military and went into the college and university with the GI Bill. And colleges and universities were saying, we need some better information about where these students are in their basic skills in order to better advise them for their courses of study. Then we jump into quickly to the Civil Rights era, where the federal government started putting huge amounts of money into the public school, and the public was asking for different kinds of assurances that the money was being used for what its intended purpose was. And started out with Title I, that was really intended to help upgrade the reading and math skills of students in high poverty areas. That stayed pretty much into that context as a part of the federal programs until we got into the 80s and the release of the Nation at Risk report, and it brought new attention to the importance of accountability in our educational system. President Reagan introduced some of the testing requirements. They were strictly optional at that time for the most part. Then President Clinton encouraged them to be a greater part of the educational initiative. But at the beginning of the 2000, with the No Child Left Behind, they became mandatory, and the decisions that were being made were really the beginning of the high stakes involvement of standardized testing.
And as a parent, I have one son with special needs, and we look at these standardized testing, but I know in learning, having to advocate for my son, in looking at the laws, that it's the case conference committee's responsibility to determine appropriate assessments. But when our case conference committees can't look at these assessments to even determine if they are appropriate, then how are we going to make a decision if they are? The Dibbles testing, you said Title I is about reading and math. The Dibbles test I know is used hugely across the United States, and I did opt my child out of the Dibbles testing because it was killing his love of reading. Joan, as an educator, when you looked at these tests in standardized assessments, were they helpful?
Absolutely not. If any teacher would know what students were doing and where they were in their learning and reading and writing, just by being with them every day and working with students every day.
And that's pretty much the same conclusion that I came to with my kids' teachers, whether it's my son with disabilities or not, that we already knew before the state standardized testing or forced from the federal government came along, that we knew where they were in reading. I did force the school system to retain my child in second grade because he wasn't ready for all that reading in third grade. And so it's about empowerment through knowledge for parents as well as community members about what's going on in our education system. It's being forced from, as Phil talked about, the history. It's being forced down from our federal government into our states and local levels down to teachers.